Hey guys, thanks for coming back and watching another video. Today I'm talking about this specific tree that's close to a little bit over 7 feet tall. And so this tree is native to China, but it's more well known in Japan. It's actually the fruit that this tree bears is extremely popular in Japan. In the United States, not so much because I think our native persimmon trees that grow here are very astringent and not very good. People just don't like them. Astringency is kind of like when you drink a glass of wine that's very dry. You get that kind of pucker feel in your mouth. Of course, that's normal with a nice dry wine, but with the fruit, not so much. So this particular variety is Fuyu, and it is a Japanese variety, and it's really non-astringent. It's very sweet, and it's a great tree to plant in your garden. My wife is Japanese, so this is something she's been wanting for a long time. I went to the local garden center today, and these were on sale for 50% off. So it would have normally been over $100. So it was quite a bit off there. And I'm really happy I found it because I love persimmons too, if they're sweet and they have that honey flavor and a little bit of taste of cinnamon in there as well. So this is what we're going to be doing today, is planting one of these. And I'm going to give you all the details I can about planting success. Even if the tree you start with is much smaller, I'll tell you everything I know about speeding up the growth and fruit production and keeping it good and healthy, when to plant, when to fertilize, what to fertilize. So thanks for coming back, and let's get started. So I'll start by saying that if you go with a native variety that's native to the United States, I don't think you're going to enjoy the fruit as much. It can ripen to the point where it's sweeter and less astringent, but I think the best two varieties is Fuyu and Hachiya, which is both Japanese varieties, and I think those two are the best. These trees do get quite large. This particular tree could get up to 40 feet tall in a few decades, so I'm going to keep it pruned really low, and I'm going to hope that it spreads out and produces a lot of fruit, and I'm just not going to allow it to get that tall. But this variety also, and I guess both Japanese varieties, are going to require at least 6 hours of sunlight. You're going to want to put them in full sun. They say they can tolerate some shade. Actually, on the label it said that, but I don't think I'd put it in shade if you want to maximize fruit production. I just don't think you're going to get as much fruit if you put it in partial shade. So I think it needs full sun. Another thing you're going to want to think about is where you're locating it in your yard. You don't want to put it, you want to put it in the highest point in your yard as possible to avoid where frost may settle. If that's not possible, the most important thing is don't put it in an area where you have standing water or wet soil for most of the year. If you do that, persimmons absolutely hate to be in standing water. So if it's in an area like that, it's probably going to die. You're probably going to kill it. So I'd say try to find a place in your yard that's higher, more elevated, that does not have soggy soil. Persimmons will not thrive in that soil and most likely will not survive. So the ideal soil pH for the persimmon is going to be 6.0 to 6.5, and you can buy these online at Amazon. You can testers. They're also multimeters. They'll tell you moisture, pH, how much fertilizer. This one right here will tell you how much fertilizer, if you have too much or too little. So a really good soil tester is an essential part of your garden, and you can purchase one on Amazon and have it in just a matter of days. So I'll put the link there for you. But that's important. Persimmons prefer the soil to be a little bit more acidic, so that's why I'm going to put peat moss in the mixture, and it's going to be, well, I'll tell you the exact mixture in a moment when we go out to the garden where we've already got the hole dug. But you want it to be on the acidic side. But first, we're losing sunlight quickly, so I'm going to have to do this a little faster than normal. I'm going to mix up an aspirin mixture and soak it in this bucket. And the reason we want to do that, if you want to know the exact reason, I'll link the video that talks about using aspirin in your garden. Is really going to help it. There's systemic, if I can say that, systemic reaction once the aspirin gets into the root system, and it's going to help protect the plant, make it stronger, protect it from disease and fungus. It's really a great thing to learn about early on because these are so cheap. I think these were like $4, $4 to $5. So, and these will last me for quite a while. You can see it's a huge number of them in there. So it's uncoated aspirin. Check out that video. I put it in the top. But that is really important to do before you even plant it. You just want to soak it in a bucket of water with the aspirin formula. Now, as far as the hole you're digging, based upon your root ball or the container it's in, you're going to want to go twice as wide as the container it's in. and you want to go to the same depth. So you don't want it sticking up out of the ground. You want it to be at the same level as the ground, and you want the hole to be twice as wide. What I've done on the hole that I've dug, it looks like an asteroid hit. I've thrown the dirt all the way around in a 360 pattern. The reason I do that, we're mounding around the outside, so when a rain does come, it's going to go down into the soil, and it acts as like a little swimming pool, so all the water is moved inward. That's really necessary for my soil. I have really poor soil. Our soil here in the southeast, in this particular location, zone 7A, is extremely clay, and it doesn't have a lot of nutrients. So it's so important to do your own mixture there if you want the plant to thrive. But again, we're just creating kind of a mounding effect around the outside of the hole so we can push that water in there. We often get weeks sometimes. One summer we had an entire summer with almost no rain. So that's another important factor, is once you put this in the ground, you're going to make sure that you get 1 to 2 inches of water on this each week. Now I have an irrigation system, so that's going to help me out quite a bit. If you don't, you can set up buckets that will slowly water it, and I can show you that too in a later video. But it's just basically just taking a gallon water jug, fill it up, put a little hole in it, and it will slowly drain over the period of time. You'll have to do that maybe once a day, so it slowly gives water right to the root ball. So another note about the type of tree you have, if it's in a container and there's soil in it, it's not bare root, then you're good. You can go directly to the hole. If it is a bare root tree, you're going to want to soak it in a bucket for anywhere from about 3 hours, 3 to 6 hours, and let it completely hydrate the tree. If it's bare root, if it's not bare root, you can just go ahead and get ready to plant it. But that's another thing to remember. So another thing about the tree, if you bought it in some type of container, when you remove it from the container, you want to inspect the roots and make sure they haven't spiraled around the pot. If it's been in the pot for a long time, the roots will start spiraling. So you want to tease the roots out. You want them to go out just like if you were looking at a tree. You want to tease them out at the bottom so they're going to go out in all directions and form a really nice root system. If they're spiraled, even once they're in the ground, they may continue that same pattern. So that's one thing you want to do, is inspect the root and make sure it's not heavily spiraled inside of the container. So I'm going to go ahead and mix up the formula because we are running short on daylight today, and I want to make sure I have time to show you the entire process. I'm going to take 3 of these aspirin. I'm going to crush them up. I'm going to try not to make, oh, I'm so sorry. I know that's terrible on the mic. I'll try to remember to edit that out. But we're going to crush these aspirin. They're non-coated. I'm going to crush them into a fine powder. Now, if you have this bare root, what you'll want to do is you want to do this mixture. Take this, put it in your 5-gallon bucket, mix it up really good, and then allow the bare roots to be exposed to the aspirin. If you are using a potted plant, this, whatever size, you're going to take these 3 aspirin, you're going to water it. The last thing you do is you're going to water it right around the base of the tree, right where the tree goes into the ground. And so we'll wait to do that because we've got to get out to the garden and plant this tree. Okay guys, as I said earlier, I've dug this to the same depth, and this pot is really high, but the soil level is about here, and that's the depth of the center of this hole. As you can see, I threw all the dirt in a 360 pattern. I didn't want to put it off to one side or remove it completely and take it somewhere else. I want the dirt acting as kind of a drainage slope all the way around the tree. So we're going to start by tapping one side of the container pot. It just slides right off. I'm going to carefully put it into the hole. Now, I know the mic is probably picking up the leaves rattling. I'm sorry if that made too much noise. Okay, now I'm going to inspect the roots and make sure they're not circling, because if I have to, I can come out with a root hook. I'll show you what a root hook looks like. I use it in my bonsai work. So it looks like it's pretty good. I don't see anything that shows any signs of being root bound. But as you can see, the soil level of the tree is almost exactly the same. So we're going to mix up our soil. And I'm just trying to make sure it's nice and straight before I put it in there. But we've got the hole ready. We've got the soil we're about to mix. And then there's a couple of additives I want to put in there that's going to make a huge difference. Okay guys, I mentioned a root hook. In the bonsai world, this is a root hook. Helps you tease the roots out and pull when you're doing a repotting of a bonsai. Sometimes bonsai can stay into pots for many years, so this will help tease out the roots. And if it's same thing applies if you have a nursery pot, you can get these on Amazon. Mine is quite old, probably needs time for replacement, but you get these on Amazon. I'll put the link to that. But the mixture, since persimmons prefer acidic soils, a little bit more acidic, we are going to use peat moss, so it'll help with the acidity, and you're going to use some really rich black cow compost. It's going to be 2 parts black cow to 1 part peat moss. We're going to mix that right now and then put it into our hole. And I'm going to put one more additive in there, and that additive I mentioned in another video, and I'll put a link to that, is this product right here. It's extremely important to use this because we have such dry weather here at times. This is watering crystals, and like I said, these work great to help your plant survive and keep it from drying out. So I'm just going to go ahead and mix that right now. Okay guys, so you saw me mix the soil, 2 parts black cow composted manure, 1 part sphagnum peat moss, and those two were mixed. Then I topped that with the soil moist, and I blended that in. The soil moist is the water expanding crystals. Once they get wet, they can absorb up to 400 times their weight in water, and that can also help if you have a dry spell. And my understanding is they can last up to 5 years. So that's really important too if you live in a dry area. If you live somewhere like in the Northwest, like Washington State or Seattle, maybe you don't have to worry about that. But here we have terribly dry conditions. So I'm gonna dump this into the hole, spread it around, and then we'll do a couple more things there. Okay, I'm just making sure that the root ball is covered with a really rich soil, and I might add a little bit more peat moss. I might go back and get a little bit more black cow because I feel like it needs to be really good with that really rich black cow, and then I might top it with a little bit more peat moss to bring down the acidity. So I'll do that, and I'll be right back. Okay, guys, I'm going to finish this off with the rest of the black cow I have, and this may have a little bit of pre-mix. This is something I had already mixed. Now I think we're good there. I'm going to compact the soil just a little bit around the outer edges away from the root ball, so this area can be kind of a water reservoir whenever we get some heavy rains, and that will help this tree. So it kind of acts as a moat, if you will. And so we've really compacted it. I've still got some peat moss that I'm going to add. Hard to keep the balance here on this hillside. Okay, I'm going to top this with peat moss to bring the acidity to the right point. And this tree will be very happy because it's got such rich soil. It's got the right pH. It's got the water crystals to help hold in the moisture in the soil. We've got a moat built around it. I'm going to probably build it up a little bit more. There's a couple of more things I'm going to do. I'm going to go get some finely shredded pine bark, add that to it, then pour our aspirin solution on and finish up by watering. And I'll finish up, I get this out right, I'll finish up in the greenhouse by telling you everything else I know about making your persimmon tree thrive and produce the maximum amount of fruit. Okay guys, in between edits, I mounded up the soil a little bit more around the outer edges. The last thing I'm adding is the finely shredded pine bark. I'm going to put about 1 or 2 inches across the area, just everywhere we have exposed, the new soil exposed. I want to make sure I cover it with about 1 to 2 inches. And I want to keep it as much as possible away from the base of the tree. I don't want the tree to rot. I believe it's a grafted tree, but I'm not 100% sure about that. I didn't check closely. So I'm just going to keep adding this everywhere we have soil exposed. Okay. Just evenly spread that out. Try to keep it away right from the base of the tree to prevent rot. And there we have it. We're ready to water. And I'm going to start by watering with the hose pipe and then finish up with the aspirin solution. Okay guys, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to heavily water this in, make sure my water's not hot coming out of the pipe, and just water this for a good 2 or 3 minutes. I'm going to misspray the leaves as this has been sitting in a garden center on top of asphalt, so I want to make sure it's really hydrated and no chance of sun scorch because it was in full sun and it may have not been watered properly at the garden center it was at. Now I left you'll notice there's this stabilization pole. It looks like a piece of bamboo. I'm going to leave it in there for right now, but I will remove it, and I'll remove the label as well. But I just want to focus on getting this in the ground before sunset, and then we'll go back into the greenhouse and we'll discuss some of the best ways to boost production of your persimmon. And we're just going to carefully water this around where we know the root ball is at. And I don't have my watering can, so I'm having to do this kind of haphazardly. All right, and there you have it, a planted persimmon, and this persimmon is probably several years old. And my understanding is once you plant it, it's anywhere from 2 to 7 years, but it's possible we could see persimmons next year because it's such a large tree. So we'll see, but it's ready to go for winter. It's protected and it's good. Okay, so I just want to go over all the high points of and important things that I may have forgot to mention about the persimmons. You want to make sure that this tree is positioned in at least 6 hours of direct sunlight. If you plant it near a tree or a building, you want to give it about a 10 to 15 foot distance between them, because if they're too close to other trees, it might shade and then it may not produce the fruit that you're hoping for. So make sure you've separated it out by 10 to 15 feet. The 6 hour rule is really important because they really like full sun. If you can get more than 6 hours, that's even better. And if you live in a high wind area, you want to consider staking in kind of a TP three different stakes. If it's a really high windy area, you want to do 3 different stakes towards the center of the tree. And that way, if you get some really strong winds, it'll keep it from being toppled over. I don't have that strong wind problem. We occasionally get tornadic weather here, but it's pretty rare. And that area is surrounded by buildings and other trees and a fence line. So I think I'm okay there. So I'm just going to use the one stake that it came with. If something happened and it blew over, it would be kind of a rare thing because I've never had that happen before in the yard. So if you do live in a high wind area, make sure you stake. You can use like bamboo stakes or some of the metal stakes you see at the big box stores, but just make sure you remember that, because until the roots get established, the tree is susceptible to being blown over in a high wind area. Now, immediately after you've planted it, you want to look for any dead or damaged branches. You want to remove those. You'll also want to do that type of pruning in the winter time when the tree is dormant. Also, if you have any branches that are crossing, you want to prune one or the other off. And also you want to keep the canopy of the tree kind of open so more and more sunlight can get into the inner branches and produce more of those delicious persimmons. Also in the spring, you want to make sure you fertilize with a balanced fertilizer. Excuse me, I sound like I'm blah, blah. So anyways, these mosquitoes are driving me crazy. If you want to do that in the springtime with something like a 10-10-10. Now this is not 10-10, it's a slow release fertilizer, but I'm going to go ahead and do about 8 ounces on there now. And the reason is I want some of the roots to get established before our first frost. I think we're about 6 to 8 weeks before the frost gets here. So I want to make sure that it has a chance, before it goes into its dormancy state, that it has a chance to absorb some of this fertilizer. Also, I might go and do a spray with the high phosphorus fertilizer I've talked about. I'll put a link to both of these in the description. So that's 2 things you want to do when you plant, but also again in the springtime, so you can get it off to a good start with the balanced fertilizer. And the bloom booster, I really like that because it's got a high phosphorus content, and that's going to help with root development. I don't expect persimmons next year. I would be pleasantly surprised if there were any, but if it was 2 years on, I would expect a lot of persimmons to, once it becomes established, I think the second year we will have a lot of persimmons to pick. Oh, and about picking, some people say just twist the fruit off. You don't want to damage it when you do that. You want to use a set of pruners. I think you'll less chance of damaging the branch. So just kind of take your pruners and gently prune it off. Some people, like I say, will twist and they might actually damage the branch. So I would make sure I use the pruners. You're not going to be pruning a lot the first or second year anyways, first year especially. The second, third year, you just want to carefully remove those. Once they've achieved their full color, you can remove them. And that's usually late in the year, by the way. Also, I've got a video on the channel about disease, funguses, and insect problems, natural cures that you can use. I'll put links up at the top to each one of those videos. That's if you want to go the organic route. I try to always do that first, try to go the organic route. Sometimes it's not possible. We have a massive insect population here and the humidity is incredible, which usually causes a lot of fungal diseases. Roses will hardly grow here. They're very difficult to grow here. The roses we do have always have fungal diseases no matter what we do. So remember those things as you want to check out those videos, and that will help you with the possible fungal diseases and organic method. So one more note about harvesting, and this could be 2 to 7 years depending on the size tree you planted. If you're really lucky and you started with a really large tree and everything goes just right for you, it could be the next season, but that's kind of unlikely. But anyways, you want to wait until your persimmon is fully colored on this variety. Now, on the there's, like I said, there's two types, astringent and non-astringent. This variety is non-astringent, and you can take it from the tree once it's fully covered. I just don't think the astringent varieties are good. I have a friend that has one in his backyard, and they're just unedible. So make sure you know the type you're getting. Make sure you get one of the Japanese varieties. I think you're going to be a lot happier, and you won't waste that money or time waiting on persimmons that you're just not going to like, and you're going to end up throwing in the trash or feeding to maybe the deer if you have deer in your area. So after saying everything I've said about persimmons, it may sound like it's difficult to grow, but in reality, persimmons are actually very easy to grow. Once you get everything right in the beginning, you're just going to monitor the tree for diseases and insect problems, and that can be solved organically most of the time. So just remember that just keep an eye on it and prune it properly, and I think you'll really be happy with the results. Once you remove the fruit, if they're not quite ripe, you can store them at room temperature on a kitchen counter until they completely ripen. If you feel of them and they feel a little soft, they're really ready to eat and very sweet and very good. So I just want to say thanks for watching. It's been a long video, and I think it's the end of the day. The sun just went down, and I'm melting like a snow cone in August. The humidity here is unbelievable. It's like being outside in a sauna here in the southeast, the deep south in zone 7. So anyways, I want to say thanks so much for watching. Again, I'm repeating myself. But anyways, if you would leave a comment or a question, if anything I think I said was wrong or incorrect, please let me know. I'm always learning. I love learning, and I love interacting with the people who are interested enough to watch. Have a great day.